You are listening to the Stand Out Now podcast with your host, Dave Mendonca. Check out each episode as top experts share their proven marketing, publicity, and sales tips to help you cut through the advertising noise so you can reach your ideal clients, get noticed, and connect with powerful influencers. The Stand Out Now podcast is brought to you by podcastinterviewexperts.com, helping entrepreneurs attract clients through business podcast guest appearances.
Today, I'm joined with a terrific communication expert who has been featured in many media outlets such as CNN, the New York Times, and Fast Company. Her firm, Duarte, has brought to life some of the world's greatest presentations for leaders and brands. Nancy Duarte, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
My pleasure, Nancy. Now, let's get right into this. Right off the bat, I'm going to ask you this question. This is a question that many of my guests find very interesting. When you were a kid, what marketing or sales strategies, knowingly or unknowingly, did you use to persuade people to give you what you wanted?
Yeah, I do think I had strong persuasive verbal skills that probably as a child aired on manipulation.
Really?
I don't know. Probably did. I would skirt situations or blame things on others. I diverted or deflected. Like when I was a little kid, I adored my baby sister. She's 3 years younger than me. And somehow I let the side of the crib down and just to touch her, to, rub her back and pet her. And of course she rolled out, fell on the floor. Great. The heater cracked her little head open. And somehow I convinced everyone that my brother did it.
Oh my goodness.
So I think I was, and then so pitiful because then when I was about 14 or 15, there was a lot of family tension. And my mom would do these family meetings, where she would make us all come together. And I must have been in some sort of broken state. And I cried and confessed my sin that it was me. I guess I carried that guilt most of my life that somehow I persuaded him that my brother created this massive gash in my infant sister's head.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, it's a terrible story. Sorry. I wish I did sell. I was more of a salesperson, I would say, than a marketer. I was in Campfire Girls instead of Girl Scouts, so I sold the most mints in the whole city of Chico in like the 5th grade. So clearly, I just don't remember what I did, but I'm sure it was verbal.
Oh my goodness. So you don't have the step-by-step as to how you basically threw your brother under the bus.
No, I was so little. I was like 3. Yeah, but I have patterns of that. Like I mysteriously always persuaded everyone to let me win every board game that we played, or I don't know. I don't have the mystery of it nailed down, but definitely if I could get my dad to laugh, I was out of trouble.
Right.
It was all verbal skills. I don't think I had marketing campaigns per se.
Sure, for sure. But it just goes to show the power of language. And just power of language packaged with, at the time, like your baby cuteness, probably. Daddy's little girl, probably you leveraged that a little bit.
A little bit. I could see that. I did do little marketing campaigns. I ran for cheerleader in the 8th grade. I had the cutest little brochure. It was so cute, but I didn't win. So clearly the marketing didn't work. It could be because I kind of looked like a flightless bird trying to take off when I was doing cheerleading. So it might have been impossible for me to have won. But yeah, I can't say that I had kind of this oddly traumatic childhood. And so I don't feel like I won very much as a small child. It might be what's made me more determined as an adult. Yeah, so that's interesting. It's a good question. Made me reflect.
For sure.
Ramble. I had to ramble a bit. But.
No, not at all. That wasn't a ramble. Not at all. Okay, so tell me about how, like, some of those misses you're talking about, like, during your childhood, some of the losses, like, what was it about those that did catapult you to success in your career?
Yeah, I did this really interesting, we were building this beautiful story practice, like, not speech practice, but story. How do you get leaders to tell personal stories? And one of the exercises we have them do before they even show up so they can understand the power of recalling childhood stories, because it can be beautiful, it can be traumatic, And so we used, I don't know if you've seen Kurt Vonnegut's, he does this lecture at a chalkboard, and he draws a timeline, and he draws out the shape of Cinderella. And above the midline is good fortune, and below the midline is ill fortune. And you're supposed to kind of, in our exercise, we use that as a model to just map out your life as it undulates between positive, negative memories and stuff. And I remember being struck by a 2-year period in elementary school where I was really happy and I was competing against myself. And oddly, I was happiest. Like there was a reading program where you could go from red, orange to yellow to green to blue. And as you advanced, you competed against yourself. And I wanted to be like, I think I can get to purple. I think I can get to purple quickly. It wasn't to beat the other kids. And then they put in a self-paced math program. And I'm like, oh, I would love to finish that in the 5th grade. And I'm going to work hard against myself to finish it. And it wasn't like I was like, I'm better than you. It was like, I love the sense of accomplishment. And there was a whole cluster of about 6 things where I was given the opportunity to compete against myself. And I think I was hardwired to do that because when you look at kind of my childhood and my upbringing, I think that's what I was doing. I was competing against myself to become the opposite of that. So I was like, I know I will set this goal for myself to have an adulthood different than my parents' adulthood, right? So it was like this underlying motivation to be different than, not better than, not greater than, not first at it, but just different than. And I think that's what determined I would get on my bike and ride my bike miles and miles and miles just so I could sit in the homes of other people I thought were healthy and observe how they behaved. One of my girlfriends lives 20 miles away. I'm only in the 7th grade. And I would ride up to her house every single weekend and just hang out with them and watch how they communicated and behaved because I needed to reset my expectations of it's that sign of compete with myself. How do I find something different than what I know today? And I think that's what shaped me. And it wasn't until I literally did that Kurt Vonnegut exercise like 4 weeks ago and saw these little clusters of happiness that spiked. Because when you're surrounded by unhappiness, to have something spike that's like, I sold the most Campfire Girl mints. And I was excited about it, but it wasn't that I won and got a trophy. It was that I did it, And so there were these just little groupings that were that. And it was almost like this crazy discovery that I compete against myself and enjoy it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, considering what you went through as a child, it's fascinating. That young of an age to have that kind of determination and mindset to go against the grain like that and to really strive for something, strive for greatness. Not a lot of kids that age would do that.
I don't know why I was like that. Like each of my siblings, we all have different experiences growing up. And, some of the things that were traumatic to me weren't traumatic to others, and things that were traumatic to them, I breezed through. So it's kind of interesting. Every one of us has a different coping mechanism that we created that's impacted us as adults. But I'm glad. I'm glad that was my coping mechanism because it's yielded to a way of driving my life.
Right. And that drive has also led you towards Duarte in terms of being a part of that organization. Tell me about how you got there, how you met the founder, Mark.
Yeah, well, I fell in love with Mark in junior high. And we got married. I was 18. I actually went to 1 year of college and I got a C- in speech communication and a D in English. And now I write books about speech communications in English, but fell in love very, very young, was welcomed into his very highly functioning family. And it was good. I think it was good I married young. So Mark came down here Mark and I, after we were married about 5 years, we came down here to the Silicon Valley for him to go to school, and then we were going to bounce out. But instead, he fell in love with the Mac and had a vision for a company. And then I joined him after he was in it for about 2 years. We started as a technical illustration company, and this is 1988. So last week was our 30-year company anniversary.
Oh, my goodness. Congratulations.
Yeah. So early on, he got carpal tunnel. He had to move to accounting and IT instead of being the illustrator. And so he's kind of more dabbled in the business for the last 10 years or so. He's retired and paints. He's a oil paintings. He does beautiful oil paintings. So we met, fell in love young, love working together on the business. He definitely is more on the administration side now. And now he's retired for about 4 years, semi-retired. So that's how we met. And I've been kind of doing the biz
Couple of
the
things.
strategy, the clients, the IP, build the training courses and all that stuff too.
A couple of things, okay, that caught my ear. Okay, you got married at 18. Were people around you saying you guys were crazy?
Well, my mother-in-law was 18 when she got married, so nobody could say that I was too young, right? My own daughter got married at 19, and I couldn't say you're too young, and she's blissfully married, so it is risky. When my husband, Mark, asked my dad for permission to marry me, and I remember my dad said, I don't like it, I don't agree with it, but I give you my blessing.
Wow.
And my mom
made him sweat for a second.
Yeah, for a second. And my mom at my wedding got in my husband's face at our wedding reception and pointed her finger in his face, which is typical, and said, if I ever see my daughter unhappy, I am taking her away from you.
Whoa.
And Mark just goes, well, there'll never be a reason for you to come and get her. And it was just like incredibly, I think stuff like that happens at weddings all the time. But I think he and I both needed our hearts to knit together very, very young. And we needed to grow up together. I think we are more committed and united for having kind of matured into adulthood together.
Sure.
Yeah.
Number 2. Okay, you said that you both enjoy working together. Now, for many married couples, this is not the case, Nancy.
I know. We actually think about doing some sort of entrepreneur channel because our kids also turned out. I think entrepreneur kids and preacher kids have a higher probability of not turning out than probably any other offspring. But yeah, he's a bit of a yin to my yang. I'm experimental and a hummingbird, and I'm like, what about ba? And he's kind of like, well, have you considered this or that? So he's kind of this sage, for lack of a better word, because he's got more time to be restful and contemplative and meditates and spends time in prayer and stuff like that. Whereas I'm like, we have a metaphor. I'm kind of the steamboat above the surface that sputters and makes a lot of noise, and he's the rudder, right? You can take all the energy, but I will put us aground, right? So I'm well read, I'm street smart, I kind of know roughly the direction we need to go, but Mark has that nuance of setting me more squarely in exactly the right direction. Yeah, so we do. We talk, like last night, we just had a fascinating table conversation over dinner. So we figured out really early on that we can't hand tasks off to each other. Like when I was the account manager and he was my artist or whatever, that was a disaster because I would try to telepathically communicate to him like women do to men, if I was handing it off to a different artist, I would have done it more carefully. But for him, I would skip key things thinking he could read my mind because we're married, So that didn't work so well early on. But now, like last night at our dinner table conversation, we actually said, if we were to start a company today, what would it be and how would we go about it? What decisions would we make today? And why are we not structured like that? Like, why would we not be that if we were to restart today? So we just have these provocative conversations that, he contributes to and feeds. And then I'm usually the one that takes the insights. So he said, he goes, well, I wouldn't work. That was his answer to the question. Well, I wouldn't. Just wouldn't even do it.
Right.
But of course, I'm the one that's driving the thing. And so, he influences it and has really keen insights. And we have a belief system that if we're not both agreed, it's just this real deep belief system. If we both don't agree, the answer is wait. It doesn't mean no. It doesn't mean yes. But I might have this great idea and he might or he might have a great idea and I'm like, I don't know. It just means the timing is off or else the idea will die and maybe not be the right idea. So that's why he's just this constant sounding board of agreement. And then when we both agree, we boldly go into the future together.
Wow.
It eliminates blame. It's not like, well, it's your fault we're here. I said no, you said yes. Like it eliminates all of that. And it's led us to incredible success. So works for us.
Yeah, for sure. It's really hard to have those kinds of that kind of like healthy conversation, healthy dialogue with your business partner. And then you put on top of that, it's your spouse. So kudos to you guys for teaming up like that and having like an objective point of view, like what's best for the company, right? So that's not easy. That's not easy.
Yeah, I've heard it's not. We're going to try to figure out why it works. And Mark's been writing out principles, and as we've been starting to talk to entrepreneur groups as audiences, it's almost like you can hear the slurping sound of hope from them. It's just like you can hear that like a vacuum in the room where they're just starving for models and insights of how to not not just work with your spouse, but how to, like, if the entrepreneur is married, what is it like to be married to an entrepreneur? Not both of you as entrepreneurs, but what is that like? And so we've been working to try to kind of codify some of that to give other people, a little bit of what we have on that. Because I'm the presentation lady. Do you really come to me for marriage advice? Probably not, right?
Right.
But I'm an entrepreneur. I'm the presentation lady that's an entrepreneur. So we feel like we really want to help entrepreneurs in some way, and we're trying to figure that out.
Definitely. Take me back, Nancy. You're about starting up with the firm and how you guys market it. How did you get the word out? You have this firm, and from what I understand, you evolved the presentations. So how did it come about?
Well, one of the first accounts that we won was Apple. So we have our 30-year anniversary with them too. And so what's interesting about when you run a service business, if you have a great product that people think the value is worth the price, it grows by word of mouth. So what I did was I would call different departments and I would say, hey, we're working with so-and-so. Do you guys need anything? Or I would hear about an event company that was doing the next Apple event, or I would hear, and I would go and show them our work and stuff like that. So it's more salesy, I would say, than marketing. But I only had to do that for about 6 months early on, where I was calling NASA, I was calling Tandem, I was just cold calling. And then we went our first 20 years with no marketing and no sales, zero. It was all word of mouth. And then all just word of mouth organic growth. We grew anywhere from 20 to 40% a year just because we hit a nerve, right? We were solving a pain. I don't know if you remember, but 1992, PowerPoint was ugly. Like every chart you did the default was ugly. The graphics were ugly. I mean, it was just terrible. So we had to take an anvil and an axe and hatchet it and do trickery and illusions and draw things in really clever ways to just make it look attractive. And so that was kind of revolutionary back then. And so that was how our business built, was word of mouth until 2008. And that was when my first book came out. So that was exactly 20-year anniversary. It was exactly 10 years ago that my first book came out. And that's how thought leadership as marketing played a very significant role. And then a couple years later, Resonate came out. And then my Resonate TED Talk had 2 million views, which helps, unbelievably helps your business if you can get onto TED.com with your TED Talk. Yeah, so I would say now it's thought leadership, but we just added, it took about 2 years to build, because then I have all this great IP we put out there for free, like Diagram or Slide Docs. We have all these names of people. We never did e-marketing. And so we just built the kind of engine to let people know about the goings-ons and stuff. And so now we're doing some of that, mostly for the training side, because the agency still grows from word of mouth. So that's kind of the journey, I guess you could say.
For sure. Startups don't usually call up Apple. We don't normally do this.
No, you know what he did? He didn't. So Mark actually did this.
Wow.
There was this is back when you used the newspaper to find jobs, and there was this little 2-line ad in the newspaper, and it said desktop publisher needed, and it was a phone number. And he called this phone number. It was the gal who did all of Apple, what used to be called desktop publishing then, and she needed a freelancer. So Mark not joined her, but came and picked up jobs and would freelance at home. Well, her client was Apple. That's who she worked with. She decided that she's like, I hate this business. I think I want to do aromatherapy. Do you want my Apple customers?
Wow.
We're like, by then I worked with him and we were working together, and I'm like, I'm a capitalist. Who would ever say no to that, right?
Sure.
So she just gave us all her contacts and customers. But we'd also won a really significant division there that was like enterprise marketing. And when they had a really big layoff, all my contacts scattered across the valley, right when kind of the dot-com boom was just unbelievable. It was kind of a flashpoint in our company when that's my marketing tactic. Have your largest client have a big layoff.
Nice.
And take you with them to multiple customers, multiple new brands.
Wow. Yeah, it's a great strategy, Nancy. Great strategy. Talk about what got you interested in business presentations. You talked about filling a gap because PowerPoint was ugly. Was that the only reason?
Well, no, obviously, I think that the market demand was there. One of my employees says it this way too, and I've kind of adopted it. It's like presentations found me. Because when you get a C- in speech communications and you feel like you're going to be some sort of public speaker, that was like not a wound, but it felt like a big scarlet letter on my chest. Like, thought I was going to do this. Got a C- in it. And so once we got into the business and the phone started to ring people don't know, Apple was the first company to hook up a projector to a computer and project it. Up to that point, there was 35 millimeter slides and overhead. So early in our business, we had a cruddy little tiny apartment with ugly yellow shag carpet, but we had a $17,000 slide imager hooked up to our little Macs so we could produce 35 millimeter slides. So yeah, I cold called. I did little mailings too. I was like, can we do lunch? DU, like Duarte was dorky. But I would mail like, can we do lunch? And it was DU, and it was typeset nice and stuff. And a lot of companies had a policy that you couldn't receive gifts from vendors, even take them to lunch and stuff. But a couple people did call back from that. So I guess that's direct mail marketing.
Right.
But I only had to do that for a tiny season.
Wow.
The only other thing we did was every year at Christmas time, we sent a thank you gift to our key clients and just thanked them for their business. But outside that, we didn't do anything.
Wow. So where did you get those marketing ideas early on? Were you reading books? Were you talking to other business people?
Yeah, early on, I knew we were becoming a design firm. I think we started as a service bureau, but I lived off of Inc. magazine, Harvard Business Review, and there was a couple of design publications. One was called How Magazine and the other was called Communication Arts. So we subscribed to them and I would just study them, and they would do beautiful packaging, beautiful direct mail things. And, I just became a student of design. I've always been a spatial and visual communicator in person, but to really understand the beauty. And I knew it was outside of my skill sets. So I knew one of the first hires we needed to make was a designer, a really good designer, a real graphic designer, because graphic design firms did not do presentations. A lot of our referrals came from some other agencies, because once they heard we do them, they're like, well, that's gross. We're better than that. We don't do presentations. And this was before presentations were cool. Like, presentations are cool now. They were reviled. They were disgusting. And so every other agency, it was beneath them. Oh, Duarte will do it. Just send it all to them. And so we did it. We did anything and everything presentation related people asked us to do.
And now you're the thought leaders on it. So tell me about this. So let's go deeper into the thought leadership aspect. So to create that thought leadership, does everybody have to write a book? Do they got to put blogs together, do a podcast? Like, what would you recommend?
I think so. So I flipped my model. So I used to jump in and do really deep, rich thinking and curate information out of my shop and find patterns and create IP that way. But Chip Heath of the Heath Brothers, the Made to Stick, he told me that what they do is they create a talk and they'll give a handful of different talks and see which one resonates the most with the people, right? Just because I'm fascinated with something doesn't mean it's going to help anyone else. And so I just did that for my latest body of work I made called Data Stories, How to Use Data to Create Action. And it's fundamentally fantastic, but I keynoted it a couple times and then I flipped it all. So I keynoted it. Now I've built it in a workshop. It's being delivered for the first time a week from yesterday, next Wednesday. And then I'm taking all the insights, all the examples, and then turning it into a book. So I flipped it all, because I want it to be exclusive and private to my learners before we make it available to the public. So thought leadership is funny. I do think everyone needs a point of view. At minimum, people should be writing LinkedIn articles. That's like a no-brainer. That's like minimum. Having a blog, pretty important to drive traffic through SEO to your website. So it all depends. Obviously, it all depends on what you're trying to build. If thought leadership is one of your marketing strategies, then you need to have ambassadors. You need to have people that feel called to your business, that travel and speak and get others excited. It might not be the primary part of their job, but they love that and they love doing that. That's what we've built. So I don't even think I've just been rambling so long. I don't remember your question.
It's all golden. If I were you, Nancy, since you're kind of good at this speaking thing, a podcast might be a good fit too.
Yeah, you know what? We wanted to do that. And, there's this saying, a publisher told me it's the 3 Fs. You either have to be first or you have to be fabulous or you're effed, right? And we knew we weren't first, so we knew we needed to be fabulous. And now you're seeing the really fabulous ones coming out, like Malcolm Gladwell's or Reid Hoffman's Masters of Scale. Oh my God, that's like the best. There's just some, but they're produced, they have sound design, they're cut well, they tell stories and stuff. So we knew that if we got into it, it would have to be fabulous. And now you're starting to see the fabulous one come. ones come out. But yeah, we're
Great.
considering that. Doing a video series that also is repurposed as a podcast. So we're working on all that stuff.
Listen, Nancy, don't let that Gladwell guy psych you out. Don't let him psych you out, Nancy. You could do this. Everyone needs to hear your voice.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'll make a note. I'll put that on my to-do list.
For sure. Awesome. So, Nancy, tell me just a little bit more about Duarte. How can people find out about it, about your books as well? Fill us in.
Yeah. So the website's duarte.com, duarte.com. I do connect to everyone who connects me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter at Nancy Duarte, or at Duarte is the company. Where else can you find me? I usually am hiking up at Rancho San Antonio every weekend if people are out in Mountain View. But I think that's the best ways.
Oh, fantastic. Nancy, this has been really awesome. It seems like the interview went by really quickly. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Awesome. Well, everybody, that's it for another episode. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Stand Out Now podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes and rate and review it as well. You can find out more about our program at thestandoutnowpodcast.com. Thanks again, and enjoy your week.